I just want to share with everybody that God sent me a vision, and the vision was that I was supposed to run for the Board of Supervisors. So everything that we have, our heritage is grounded in prayer and grounded in a connection with God. And I followed his directives, and I was like, not me, but he said so. And it was time. It was over past time, but God saw fit to allow me to run and bring me to the place where I now sit on that board. I will say to all of you out there, this is not just all that I have done. I am resting on the shoulders of many of the African American people in this community and also in our society and in the world. I stand on their shoulders because they have paved the way for me. And so I'm grateful. And I will always make sure that I acknowledge God in all my work, but I acknowledge the work of my people, the African American community who has lifted me, who has encouraged me. Thank you so much. And I hope that I am the first, but I know seeing these young people online today, Mr. Petway and all of the members of the NAACP, I am not the last. This is just the beginning, because Spotsylvania is going to write a new history, a history that includes African American and embrace diversity. So thank you so much, and God bless you, and thank you for this wonderful program today.
I just want to just share is that we want you to look at history different this year. Okay, everybody should be on mute. Let me say who's not on mute. I need to mute somebody. Okay. Anyway, so I want you to look at history different this year. In the last half, over the last half a decade, you'll see that the decade and a half, you'll see that we have, the African American community, have made tremendous progress. We have had a president, attorney general. Now we have a secretary of defense and also a vice president. Over the last decade and a half, the African American have made tremendous progress. When you think about history, though, a lot of time history only highlight those people that have accomplished, that have achieved some things that were set before them in a different fashion. What I mean by that is that before Hank Aaron, there was a Negro League. Before Carl, let's see, his name is the first basketball name was Earl Lloyd. For Earl Lloyd, there was a Negro League, and all in those leagues, there was people who did very well. Jesse Owens was not the first fastest American during his time, but they were in history only reflect those that was allowed to participate in a fair competition. A lot of time, this is very important. There's a lot of time, right, in our history book on to highlight those that have achieved this when they was allowed to come in. But if we were taught our history, you will know that history, there was a lot of people before the ones that our books identify as that great person. A lot of people before them was taking chances and being successful in their own right. So yes, Hank Aaron may have been the first one that you recognize that was a baseball player, but in the Negro League, there were superstars way better than he was. And Jesse Owens way faster than he was. Earl Lloyd way better than the best. But however, African Americans were not allowed to participate in the NBA and the other leagues and those things that highlight people for their great success. So we have always had great success, but the powers to be did not allow us to compete against them to be that great success. So there's a lot of great success. So as you look at history, I encourage you to go back and look a little bit. And look at the data, look at the information in a separate book where you can see those other great people that some people don't highlight, but we can highlight them ourselves. So thank you. So with that said, I want to introduce you to an attorney, attorney Dondrae Maiden. He's been around with us. He helped us out all the time, and he with us when we met with the sheriff department. He helped draft some general order. He helped draft the standard for some things that we implemented we requested to have information in the sheriff's department. And each time we have needed someone of his caliber, you know, an attorney rather, he's on board to help us as we fight for the change in the criminal justice system. So without further ado, if you don't mind, just give Dondrae Maiden a hand as the honored speaker today. Thank you. Dondrae.
All right, thank you so much, President Petway. Just want to start off just saying that I'm ecstatic about our youth participation. Those that know me know that youth ministry is at my heart, and so it blesses my soul to see our young people engaged. I know a lot of people say that our young people are our future, but they are actually our today, and it's great to see such young leaders participating and taking a vital role in this Black History Month program. So greetings to everyone and happy Black History Month. We're gathered today to celebrate the accomplishments of African Americans and the central role that we have played in history and the foundation of this country. Before getting into the substance of my remarks, I would first like to take a moment to celebrate the efforts of this chapter of the NAACP for constantly setting aside time to celebrate the contributions of our ancestors, our current day leaders, and for the outstanding efforts that it takes to improve our community. Let's take a second to acknowledge the leadership of this chapter's president, President Petway, Vice President Parker, the other officers, and the work that it has carried out by each of us that are gathered here today. Last week, on February the 12th, the NAACP as a national organization celebrated its 109th year anniversary. That is 109 years of performing critical work and taking actions that have made a positive difference in our society. From its anti-lynching campaign in the early 1900s to its work on Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, which brought about integration, to the most recent We Are Done Dying campaign in the face of unarmed Black Americans being killed at the hands of the police. This organization has been monumental in fighting for equality and justice for all people. Earlier this year, Attorney Derek Johnson, president of the National NAACP, called on America, in particular, corporate America, to not just focus on Black History Month during the month of February, but to make it a year-long celebration. The history and the contributions of Black Americans are great and must be acknowledged and celebrated just as often as we celebrate the history and the contributions of white Americans. For context, Black History Month started off as a week-long celebration. It was started in 1926 by notable historian Carter G. Woodson and other prominent members of the time, choosing the second week in February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. During that week, schools and communities organized celebrations. They hosted lectures on topics relevant to the Black community. During the 1960s, the Black History Week became Black History Month. And in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month, calling on the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every endeavor throughout our history. Today, for a few short moments that I have with you, I would like to focus on the theme, a history that is worth celebrating. A few weeks ago, I was scrolling social media and came across a post that was describing a voicemail that had been left for a notable member of our community. The voicemail was from a lady who called in to voice displeasure with the efforts to rename Jefferson Davis Highway. On the voicemail, the lady stated that we, talking about white people, built this country. We helped Black people along the way, and that Black people are better here than they would have been in Africa. It's hard to imagine that some people believe that despite the horrors of centuries of slavery, that Black people are somehow better because of it. To think of the gruesomeness, the inhumane treatment of slaves, the beatings, the killings, the separation of children from parents and husbands from wives, that we should be grateful that we've experienced it. Sadly, this is not the only example of such ignorance. As a political science major at Virginia Union University, I can recall reading a number of books that portrayed the message of the Great White Hope and white Americans as savior. We were urged to read these books to help us realize that not everyone understood the greatness that lies in each of us, that not everyone understands that our history is rich, that our legacy is phenomenal, and that our impact on the world is immeasurable. But aside from those who will never view African Americans positively because of racist and bigoted beliefs, many people believe these inaccurate and distorted historical accounts because they've not learned any better. Our educational system has not been designed to include the accomplishments and the achievements of Black America. Many people believe that Black history begins with slavery and it ends with Dr. King, although now President Barack Obama has expanded the conversation. I think back to my African American history class at Washington and Lee High School down in Westmoreland County, Virginia, and it was filled with people who looked like me. Not many non-students of color were interested in learning about Black history. It was not until the summer of 2020 that this country felt an awakening, a reckoning, when many of my white colleagues, associates, and friends acknowledged their ignorance. They acknowledged their lack of knowledge about Black history or the Black struggle. When we live in such ignorance, we can't be surprised at the byproduct. When we see individuals in the Capitol on January the 6th claiming that this country is theirs and that they built this country, we can't be shocked. In reality, there is no American history without Black history. Black history is rooted in royalty, ingenuity, and genius. Africa is the cradle of our civilization, and our African ancestors include the ancient Egyptians who were pioneers in engineering, mathematics, architecture, and medicine. Early African empires include those in Ethiopia, Mali, and Zimbabwe, which all flourished before 1500. Even before the transatlantic slave trade, our history is a history that is worth celebrating. You can tell a great deal about a country by what they deem important enough to remember. America has done an awesome job of remembering our founding fathers, our Civil War generals, and our slave owners. We regularly learn about George Washington, but not George Washington Carver, who invented over 200 products, including peanut butter, was a respected college professor, and worked with 3 presidents. Here in Virginia, we learn about Patrick Henry's "Give me liberty or give me death," but we don't learn about Frederick Douglass's "The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You might rejoice, but I mourn." That is why we must take charge of celebrating our own history. If others are not going to acknowledge our accomplishments, then we must acknowledge them and share them ourselves. Carter G. Woodson said it best when he noted, "We have a wonderful history behind us, and that is going to inspire us to greater achievement." Stated another way, the great James Baldwin says, "If you know from whence you came, there is really no limit to where you can go." We must ensure that our children learn about Black Americans who contributed to every facet of our society and our country's development. We must ensure that they learn about Dr. King, but also about Shirley Chisholm, the first Black woman that was elected to Congress. We must ensure that they learn about Rosa Parks, but they also know who Ruby Bridges was, the 6-year little girl who led the integration movement when she became the first African-American student to attend William Frantz Elementary in Louisiana. We must ensure that they learn about Jackie Robinson and Michael Jordan, but they also learn about Jesse Owens, the 4-time Olympian, Althea Gibson, the first Black woman to compete in Wimbledon in 1951. Black history is at the root of every major development that has occurred throughout time. Our history is a history that is worth celebrating. We could spend the entire allotted time that we have for today's program, go into next week and the month after that, talking about the achievements of Black Americans. We could talk about Harriet Tubman, the famous abolitionist, Thurgood Marshall, the first Black justice of the Supreme Court. We could talk about Garrett Morgan and the gas mask and the traffic light, about George Crumb and the potato chip, Madam C.J. Walker, who revolutionized hair care and became a self-made millionaire. We could talk about Charles Drew, the father of the blood bank, Mark Dean and the personal computer, Lonnie Johnson and the Super Soaker water gun, Daniel Hale Williams in open heart surgery. We could talk about Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Christine Darden, otherwise known as the ladies from Hidden Figures. We could talk about Black Americans' contributions to sport and entertainment. We could talk about Bill Russell, Oscar Robinson, Gail Sayers, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Arthur Ashe, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, Serena Williams, and Naomi Osaka. We could talk about Dorothy Dandridge, Cicely Tyson, Lena Horne, Halle Berry, Angela Bassett, Viola Davis, Sidney Poitier, James Earl Jones, Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Will Smith, and the countless other Black Americans who have contributed mightily to this country. We must be proud of our history. We must ensure that our stories are told, that our achievements are celebrated, and we must hold our school systems, our educators, our textbook publishers, and the media accountable. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, I am glad to see a bill that is sitting on the governor's desk waiting for his signature that requires cultural competency as a requirement for training for teachers. While the bill was pending throughout the House of Delegates and the Senate, the Virginia Education Secretary noted that Black history is American history, and we have really outdated standards and curriculum, an antiquated way of teaching history and social studies. This gives me hope that some in society are ready for change. They see the importance of diversifying learning because it is through our diversity that we become stronger and ensure a better future for all people. Even such, we must ensure that we share our proud Black history in our homes, in our communities, in our churches, in our fraternities, in our sororities. We must ensure that our children learn about the giants who came before them. I think back to my childhood and learning about Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, both attorneys for the NAACP. I remember my time at Maryland Law where Professor Sherilyn Eiffel, now director of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, accepted nothing but excellence from us. I owe my success to the trailblazers who came before me. It is my hope that emphasizing Black history powers us to the day where there are no more first. This year, the University of Virginia School of Law named its first Black student editor as the school's law review, Miss Tiffany Mickle, a prestigious accomplishment. Here in Spotsylvania County, we have our first Black Board of Supervisor member and Dr. Deborah Fraizer. Just this year, America has its first Black and Black woman vice president in Kamala Harris. Sadly, there are more firsts to be achieved. I believe that celebrating our history, making it known with our young people will create a day where there are no more firsts, but only seconds, thirds, fourths, and so on. We have a proud legacy and a history that is worth celebrating. Let's not end the celebration at the end of the month, but let's make Black history a part of everyday America, that one day we can hold this country to the ideal that all people are created equal and are worth celebrating. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate your attention.